Hey guys, it's Pickles. Welcome back to part 2 of the history of Mel. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, I recommend you do for more context about the documentary. I also recommend that you like and subscribe if you want more videos like this. And without further ado, let's get right into part 2 of the history of Mel. Chapter 4. After season 15, it was clear of the kind of activity I could do. The next season after that would just be another season for me to get more used to grinding at a high level. In this season, I would also end up creating a team of my own once again, but this time was different. It was named MWY, and it was created because we didn't like how the way of Captain of Coco handled things. He even disbanded just before we were supposed to get our third place team title for that last season. We were pretty upset about that, and more generally because we decided to disband once he heard I was creating a team of my own. Ironically, however, MWY would not quite ending up achieving what it wanted. I surely did not have much experience as a captain, and as a result, most of our core racers that were from Coco ended up leaving the team for someplace else. I was so down about this that I just wanted to disband right away. But in the end, I ended up deciding not to. I can be thankful for that decision because despite me basically carrying the whole team for the rest of the season, we still ended up getting third place as a team and got the title. Something that Coco didn't do. But since that time finally came, that's when I disbanded the team at last. I especially didn't want to keep it around because it was extremely unmotivated to the point I felt like quitting entirely. I also ended up getting top 10s once again that season, and I would be even more used to this activity. On the brighter side, the next season would be officially the time I would join SSH. It would also be another huge step in my activity, getting top 3 and second that season. I was so glad to finally be on SSH. It was my dream team, and I remember they would not accept me back most likely because of my activity. But now, I was truly worthy enough. I was happy to contribute to the win streak and seasons they had going on, and I definitely did my part in keeping it alive. I would stay on SSH for a good 5 seasons, and the streak lasted for 11 seasons. Also during this season, I would have been in insane rivalry with a racer named Ant, and I definitely consider her my greatest competition. Even though we've only competed against each other twice overall, I had my first moments of true glory, actually experiencing the feeling of being first in a Nitro type season. But I would fall to second plenty of times to Ant later in the season, and it would result in this intense back and forth with each other. I had school all throughout the season and would race as soon as I got home and stay up usually until midnight. That would be my usual routine throughout my whole grinding experience. What would happen is that I would race all day as I did and eventually pass her to reclaim first, just before stopping for the night. Then when I would wake up, she would be past me by a decent margin, and I would have to do the exact same thing each day to get back first. The thing about Ant is that she lives across the world and would be able to race while I'll be sleeping. But with these circumstances and the situation I was in, barely passing her before I finished racing every night. It was clear I probably didn't stand a chance if it kept going back and forth like this for the rest of the season. This is indeed what would happen, and I would end up losing the season by just less than 20k points. It would have been the early morning when the season ended. I wouldn't be able to stay up, and Ant would be fully awake. She still would have won if I tried anyway. I definitely wasn't disappointed that I didn't get first that season. Ant put up a really good fight, and we both acknowledged each other for the ridiculous battle. What has made it even more crazy is the fact that our point efficiencies were super close together. Everyone knows of my accuracy today, and during this time I was pretty accurate, sitting around 98%. But not where I currently am, of course. Our speeds were usually really close, but she had just greater accuracy and speed, causing her to win the season. I would end up getting the most races though. Chapter 5. In season 18, I would repeat the same thing and would end up getting second place again. But this time, things would have been different. It was a 1 month Christmas season. There would be a Christmas break that season, which meant much more racing. This season, I had a different kind of competition. It would be Galaxy, who was only competitive for the season and this season only. But we also heard the news that this would have been the last season for season rewards, so I really wanted to get first badly. There was a team that arose named Kitty, which the goal of beating Dog that season, who were also the most active season. I didn't want to get involved in their drama, but unfortunately it would have been that way, and it would be my fault. During the beginning of the season, there was a new method that came up which allowed you to complete races way faster than usual. They named it guest racing, because it involved putting multiple guest accounts into a race and having the race start automatically. I personally hated this method. It caused me a lot of problems as a competitor, and the fact that Galaxy was using it early on as well. I wanted to play only fairly, and this was simply too unfair. The faster people, including Galaxy, made the argument that the races are too slow. But the thing is about guest racing made it only unfair, not fair. That would be true though. Back then, the faster you were, the slower the bots would load into a race. So they would continue using this method for a good part of the season, before it would finally get patched once and for all. Once this happened, I remember Galaxy feeling super unmotivated and he wanted to stop racing for that season. I was happy about this because that would have meant first place, would have been a clear way for me. However, many people were on his side and I didn't want him to give up. Due to that, and because they would end up making the bot loading times much faster soon after, Galaxy would continue racing for the season. He would stay first place in the season, and he actually kept this position for the whole season. Eventually Christmas would hit, and during this time I would achieve the new highest session of 2,486 races, beating out my typing demon session from earlier that year. This was during December 2018 for reference, but I wasn't the only one who went for the high session. Galaxy would go on to achieve a 4K session, placing himself third on the Hall of Fame for the high session, when they still had it. This would of course keep him still ahead. Throughout my time on SSH, I wouldn't stay on the team literally all the time. I would like to leave to help out other teams for a limited time. During the season, I had the idea of helping out Dog for a bit. This caused Kitty to hate me. As expected, you would see that I personally didn't like Kitty much either, so I would go on to help him for about a week. Despite this, Kitty would still remain ahead, and soon afterwards, I did realize that I wasn't doing any good for them and felt pretty bad. So I actually decided to join. So I would go on to help them for about a week. Despite this, Kitty would still remain ahead, and soon afterwards, I did realize that I wasn't doing any good for them and felt pretty bad. So I actually decided to join Kitty for just one day and help him out this time. This would be on the second to last day of the season. However, due to this, now it was Dog who ended up thrashing me. But at the end of the day, everything was good. Kitty would end up beating them, accomplishing their goal. I still would end the season off on SSH, unfortunately. However, I would end up also placing second that season, again. I was fine with Ant getting first that season, but I was not okay with this. Ant was fine getting first that season, but I was not okay with this. I got second twice in a row, and I would never achieve the champion title. It didn't help with the situation that Galaxy would sell his account soon after the season would end, showing that it basically meant nothing to him. He would get it back eventually, but it still aggravated me. I would still get more races than him that season, but it wasn't good enough to satisfy me. This meant that the next season would be my time to shine. The fact that season rewards were not around anymore was not good enough to make me quit grinding. I still kept on. and even more so, I just wanted to get first. I needed to after being so close to having it snagged away from me. Even having that feeling during the beginning of season 19, I would be so worried that someone else would win it once again. Tendons had recently popped into the competitive scene and was looking pretty active this season. He remained close but not too close to the point where it was tense. Due to this, I kept racing that he would pass me, and I was upset about that. I wanted no one else to get first except for me. I would be worried about nothing in the end, but I think that's why I was so paranoid. It quickly became an easy win for me, my first win ever. I would get first by a margin of more than 800,000 points. I would be so happy about this, and it didn't need to stop either, and I certainly didn't. Chapter 6. Season 20 would have been pretty huge for me. This time I would end up achieving the record for the most points in a season, beating it by almost 100,000 points. The old record was set all the way back in season 4, when my account wasn't even created yet. There was a lot of time and just enough for me to do that. However, even though I would accomplish this feat, I wasn't ahead for all the season. The competition with Tendons would be pretty tight during the early days of the season. He would sometimes take first place, and then I would reclaim it. Until eventually, as the season went on, I would keep pulling ahead as Tendons started to slow down his activity. Surprisingly, Moises was active this season and ended up getting second in the end. He was an OG grinder, and it was really cool to see him up there again. The margin between me and second place would have been even bigger compared to last season. I was happy to get 2 wins in a row now, basically canceling out my second place twice in a row. However, in the next season, that streak would already come to a close. This season was interesting for me because it was another summer season, which also meant I had to turn my school Chromebook in for the summer. That left only one computer that whole family would use. I would have to use that to continue my crazy activity that season. However, Pan decided to go active that season as well. This was because there was a new team called Sin, aka SYN, whose goal was to finally end SSH's season win streak. Pan wanted to be a part of it, and therefore wanted to contribute as much as he could. The only problem was that only one of us could use the computer at a time, which is why I would end up letting Pan use it for the majority of the season, and I would just do my SSH requirements in between when he needed a break. I wanted to help out SSH even more, and that's one of the what if situations I always like to think about. If I had my same activity, SSH possibly could have still won. SYN would have to put up much more of a fight. Pan would go on to have an intense competition with Tendons for first place. It wasn't until later that Pan would finally decide to stop the activity because he realized how much it was harming him if he kept it up. This would lead Tendons to go on and win the season with the new season points record, already beating out the record I set the last season. Since Pan stopped racing as much, I was able to go back to my regular activity for a little bit and still ended up getting top 20. However, SYN would be victorious in beating SSH. And I do admit that even if I was active like I could have been, I definitely would have not been Tendons, but it would have been my best season yet by far. I definitely would have been more active with the SSH and SYN duel, with the fact that it was summer season, of course. Next season, my activity would end up coming back as school was starting again. I would go on to win yet another season that year, putting myself at already 3 wins of the 2019 year. The season was nothing crazy, and it was a casual mood for me. With no one else coming close, it was at this point I was truly used to now. The next one would have been quite an interesting one. What made the season truly historical was the fact that it could have been the first sight of the botting era. At least after this one, other season, which was filled with bots. During the beginning of the season, Tennins and I, like usual, would keep on grinding there, but there was a problem. We weren't able to casually stay in our rightful positions due to many botters popping up in the season leaderboards. We would then have to be pretty competitive for a good portion of the season. I would barely be holding my spot, until eventually, they would all end up getting banned thankfully. After this, we decided to literally just chill out for the rest. This season would also end up becoming one of the least competitive in Nitro Type history. Tennins would end up winning the season again this time though, with not even 1 mil points total and just shy of it. I was looking to be super competitive this season before all the botters got banned. Also during the season, it would have officially be the time that I would leave SSH for basically good. I stayed with them for many seasons up to this point and accumulated over 100,000 races with them, even surpassing Volatile in team races. I had so much fun with them, and the reason I left was pretty stupid looking at it on the surface level. Not to get into my relationships too much, but I have developed a liking over someone named Blaze around this time. She was a captain of a very own team. I saw that they were pretty active and decided it would have been so much fun to join. I would become co-captain of the team straight away. It would still end up being so much fun. Chapter 7. It was then next season that Tennins and I decided to have a little fun. We came to the realization that so far that year, we were the only ones to win a season. With that in mind, we decided to create an account, one that we'd both end up racing on together. It would be pretty similar to what we've been doing all year, except for the fact that we would have shifts and wouldn't be hard on us. It was looking pretty solid at the start. However, the plan was cut short as we both realized that we can only go on so much without racing a lot on our main accounts. I'll race on my main account. I remember that even though I had the opportunity to take breaks while he took over, but I would still race on my main account for a bit until it would be my turn again. Because of this, I was able to secure myself in the top 100, even along with helping out a decent amount. Once we decided to stop as expected, we would go on with our sim activity. With some luck, I still managed to clutch a win that season, and still by a decent margin. That would be my total wins of that year to 4. You could say that the next season was also pretty historical, as it is the first season that I had shortened races. Before this, it took around 40 seconds to complete, and now they were shortening them down to 25 seconds. This was also the very last season of 2019 year, so I was determined to win it again. However, Anne would officially come back for that position as well. This would eventually lead to another all-out war with her, this time probably being even better than the last. Even though Anne and I were active that season, it wasn't as we actually weren't even in the picture for most of the month season. There was a racer like we like to call Stars. He was pretty active before this, but he decided to take it to another level because there was a winter break this season, and this was longer than most due to college, and he took this to his advantage. However, there was a huge problem for him. Another botter had arisen to the competitive scene called Tiberius. Even though he was as active as he could be, Tiberius would get closer and closer to him until eventually they would pass him for first place. The Stars could not keep up with the ridiculous activity the program was setting up. This caused him to completely quit the game, not just the competitive scene. From then on, no one would see him again. So only little every once in a while. Tiberius's lead would only get farther away from everyone else. It was looking like a botter would win the season unfairly. However, to everyone's surprises, Tiberius would end up getting banned a couple days before the season ended. This left the season now open to a few people, including one racer named Dragon. After the ban, the margin was pretty tight between the top 3, but I knew this was my chance. Tiberius was gone, and all I had to do was what I normally do. However, it wasn't all normal as once winter break hit. I decided to attempt a 4,321 session. One main reason would be to beat Galaxy's session he set back in 2018. In season 18. And this one's Botter session of 4,200. It also greatly increased my chances to win. It wasn't so easy though. During those last couple days, Ann and I were extremely close in points. When the final day hit, we were both racing non-stop, and since our point efficiencies were super close together, the margin would literally stay the exact same for that whole day. It felt like a literal war, and it was that point to test to see who would stop first. I was willing to race all night, if it meant keeping me and Tennant's streak alive one last time. It didn't have to come to that, unfortunately, as Ann would inform me that she would be work at morning, and therefore wouldn't be able to keep racing. I was super happy inside after hearing those news. But she would put up another great fight, one similar to season 17. This time it would be me winning, and I would race for a little longer until finally calling it a day and waking up to the sight of another win, marking my 5th and final win of 2019, and keeping our streak alive. So that's it. That's part 2 of the history of Mal. There might be a part 3. I don't know if it's finished yet, but we'll see. Stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for watching, and shout out to Mal for making this video possible. That's basically it, and thanks for watching. Bye.